woman behind the museum desk looked at Harper Zimmerman with polite confusion, and Harper knew she had about 30 seconds to sell the lie before security escorted her out into the spring twilight where he might be waiting. "I'm so sorry. I know this is irregular," Harper said, clutching her leather portfolio like a shield. "But I'm writing my thesis on neo-Gothic preservation architecture, and I flew in from Boston specifically to photograph the castle's restoration work before the light changes seasons. My advisor needs the images by Monday, and my original appointment fell through." She let genuine desperation bleed into her voice because it was there anyway, thrumming under her skin where it had lived for 13 months. "I have my university credentials, my insurance information, anything you need. I just need 2 hours with the third-floor gallery before you close." The woman, whose name tag read Diane, glanced at the clock. 5:47 p.m. The museum closed at 6 on Thursdays, and outside the tall windows, the April sun was already painting the Chicago skyline in shades of amber and rust. Harper had chosen this day, this hour, with the same meticulous care she now applied to every decision, every route, every moment of her shrunken life. Diane's expression softened, and Harper recognized the look, the universal sympathy of one woman seeing another at the end of her rope. "Let me call my supervisor." 10 minutes later, Harper stood alone in the third-floor gallery, surrounded by medieval tapestries and suits of armor that threw long shadows in the fading light. She had paid a rushed admission fee, signed a liability waiver, and been given a stern warning about the building's security system. The staff would complete their closing rounds, lock up at 6:30, and the alarm would activate automatically. Diane had been very clear about that. Harper had nodded and smiled and promised to be out by 6:15 at the latest. She had lied. The castle wasn't a true castle, not originally. Nikolai Winter had built it in 1893 as a private mansion, a Gothic revival fantasy of turrets and battlements transplanted to the American Midwest by a reclusive millionaire who had, according to the historical plaques, died in 1920 without heirs. The building had passed through various hands before being converted to a museum in 1975, its grand halls now filled with rotating exhibits of medieval European artifacts. Harper had discovered it 3 weeks ago while searching desperately for places with complicated architecture, limited exits, and robust security systems. Places a man couldn't slip into unnoticed. Places with cameras and locks and staff who paid attention. She waited in the gallery until she heard the distant sounds of departure, doors closing, voices calling goodnight, the final sweep of footsteps on marble. The lights dimmed to emergency levels and the vast building settled into silence. Harper moved carefully through the shadows to a storage alcove she'd identified during a previous reconnaissance visit. She wedged herself behind a massive oak display cabinet that held illuminated manuscripts, pulling her knees to her chest, and waited for her heart to stop racing. This was insane. She knew it was insane, but she also knew that Marcus Fell was out there somewhere, tracking her movements with the patient obsession that had already cost her her job, her apartment, and most of her friends. The police had been sympathetic and useless. The restraining order was a piece of paper that Marcus had violated 6 times, always careful never to quite do enough to warrant arrest. He sent letters to her workplace. He followed her to her sister's house. He had somehow gotten into her car and left a single white rose on the driver's seat with a note that said, "Soon." The stalking had started 14 months ago when she'd smiled at him in a coffee shop, a reflexive politeness she'd replayed 1,000 times with acidic regret. He'd taken that smile and constructed an entire relationship from it, a delusion that grew more elaborate and more terrifying as the months wore on. He believed they were meant to be together. He believed she was simply confused, playing hard to get, testing his devotion. He believed she would eventually understand. Harper had stopped believing in anything except fear and exhaustion. She'd stopped sleeping more than a few hours at a time. She'd stopped going anywhere without checking over her shoulder, mapping exits, calculating risks. Her life had contracted to the size of a prison cell, and Marcus held the key. So yes, breaking into a museum to hide was insane. But it was also the first night in over a year that she might sleep without jerking awake at every sound, might close her eyes without imagining his face at her window. The castle was silent around her. Harper closed her eyes. She woke to the sensation of being watched. Her eyes snapped open onto darkness, and panic flooded her system before she remembered where she was. The gallery was black except for thin emergency lighting along the baseboards. She checked her phone. 3:17 a.m. She had actually slept, but something had woken her. Harper held perfectly still, hardly breathing, listening with the hypervigilance that had become her default state. For a long moment there was nothing. Then she heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the gallery toward her hiding spot. Terror locked her muscles. Marcus had found her. Somehow he'd known, he'd followed her, he'd gotten inside, and now there was nowhere left to run. The footsteps stopped. "You can come out." The voice was male, low, and carried an accent she couldn't quite place, something old-world and elegant. "I know you're behind the manuscript case." Not Marcus. Marcus's voice was higher, eager, with a Midwestern flatness. This voice was different. But that didn't mean safety. Harper stayed frozen. "I am not going to hurt you," the voice continued, patient. "But you are in my home, and I would like to understand why." His home. Harper's mind raced. A security guard? But the voice held too much authority, too much certainty. And he'd said home, not building or museum. "I'm armed," she lied, her voice emerging rough from sleep. "I'm calling the police." "Your phone has no signal in this section of the castle. I block it." A pause. "And you are not armed. Please come out. I prefer to have conversations face to face." There was something in his tone that was neither threatening nor kind, simply factual. Harper realized she had two choices: stay hidden until he forced her out, or emerge with whatever dignity she could muster. Neither was good, but one at least gave her information. She crawled out from behind the cabinet, her legs stiff from hours of cramping. The emergency lighting threw everything into shadow and suggestion, but she could make out a figure standing near the gallery entrance, tall, very tall, and perfectly still in a way that humans usually weren't. "There," the voice said with what might have been approval. "That's better." Harper squinted, trying to make out details. "Who are you?" "The owner of this castle, and you are trespassing." He moved then, stepping into a shaft of moonlight from a high window, and Harper's breath caught. He was beautiful in the way that Renaissance paintings were beautiful, too perfect to be quite real. White hair fell to his shoulders, bone white, like frost. His skin held the same colorless pallor, but it didn't read as sickly. Instead, he looked carved from marble, elegant and severe. He wore dark clothes, impeccably tailored, and regarded her with eyes that were such a pale gray they seemed almost silver. Harper had never seen anyone who looked like him. Her rational mind supplied explanations: albinism, theatrical makeup, elaborate cosplay. But her instinct, the deep animal part of her brain that had kept her alive this long, whispered something else entirely. "The museum closes at 6, she managed. "You shouldn't be here either." "This building is leased to the Museum Trust," he said, "but the lease terms are quite specific. The building is theirs during operating hours. After closing, it reverts to me." He tilted his head, studying her. "You paid admission, attended the exhibits, and then hid when the staff left. Why?" Harper's mind spun through possible answers and landed on the despairing realization that she had nothing left to lose. "I needed somewhere safe." Safe from what? The question was simple, but something in his tone suggested he would know if she lied. Harper wrapped her arms around herself. "From someone who won't leave me alone." He was quiet for a moment, and she had the unsettling sense that he was reading layers of meaning she hadn't spoken. "A stalker." It wasn't a question. Harper nodded anyway. "And you believed my castle would protect you." "I didn't know it was your castle. I thought it was just a museum with good security." She met his strange, pale eyes. "Are you going to call the police?" "No." He moved then, walking closer with that same preternatural stillness, and Harper fought the urge to back away. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough that she could see her reflection in his eyes. "What's your name?" "Harper Zimmerman." "Harper." He said it like he was tasting the syllables. "I am Nikolai Winter." The name from the plaques, the millionaire who had died in 1920. Harper stared at him. "That's not possible." "Many things are possible in darkness that seem impossible in daylight." He studied her face, and she had the sense he was seeing past her expression to the exhaustion beneath. "You are afraid, not of me, not primarily, but of someone else, someone who has been hunting you for some time." Hearing it said aloud, stated with such calm certainty, made something crack in Harper's chest. 13 months, she whispered. "He's been following me for 13 months. Nikolai's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his presence, a cold edge sliding into place. "Tell me." And Harper did. Standing in the moonlit gallery at 3 in the morning, she told this impossible stranger everything. About Marcus and the coffee shop, about the letters and the following and the rose in her car, about the police who couldn't help and the restraining order that meant nothing, and the way her life had become an exhausting calculation of risk and hypervigilance, about the grinding, relentless fear that never stopped. Nikolai listened without interrupting, utterly motionless, his pale eyes fixed on her face. When she finally ran out of words, he was quiet for a long moment. "You are right to be afraid," he said at last. "Men like this do not stop on their own. They escalate." Harper's laugh was bitter. "I know. That's why I'm hiding in a museum." "Not a museum, a castle." He held her gaze. "My castle. And if you wish it, you may stay." Harper blinked. "What?" "You came here seeking sanctuary. I am offering it." Nikolai's voice was utterly calm, as though he offered refuge to desperate strangers every day. "Stay here. Live here. I give you my word that no man will find you within these walls, and no man will harm you while you are under my protection." "I don't understand. You don't know me. Why would you—" "Because you asked for help in the only way you knew how," he said it simply. "And because I have lived a very long time, and I recognize when someone is being hunted." The words hung in the air between them. Harper's rational mind screamed that this was absurd, that you didn't accept offers from strange men in castles at 3 a.m., that there had to be a catch. But her rational mind had also spent 13 months being completely useless at keeping her safe. "What do you want in return?" she asked warily. "Nothing. Nobody offers something for nothing." "I'm not asking you to trust me," Nikolai said. "I'm asking you to make a choice. You can leave at dawn, return to your life as it is, continue running. Or you can stay here where he cannot follow." He paused. "The choice is entirely yours." Harper looked around the dark gallery, at the shadows and the ancient artifacts, and the impossible man with white hair and silver eyes. She thought about the apartment she'd sublet under a false name, the job she'd quit because Marcus had started showing up, the friends who'd stopped calling because her fear was exhausting. She thought about how small her life had become. "How can you promise he won't find me?" "Because I am very good at keeping things hidden, and because I am very good at keeping promises." The absolute certainty in his voice made her believe him, despite everything. "Stay, Harper, at least for a while. See if it helps." She should say no. She should leave right now and figure out literally anything else. But she was so tired, and he was offering her something she hadn't had in over a year, the possibility of safety. "Okay," Harper whispered. "I'll stay." Nikolai inclined his head, a gesture that seemed courtly and old-fashioned. "Then welcome to Castle Winter. Come, I will show you to proper quarters. That alcove cannot have been comfortable." He led her through the dark museum, moving with perfect confidence despite the lack of light. Harper followed, her exhaustion returning now that the adrenaline was fading. They passed through galleries she recognized from her earlier visit, and then through a door marked "Staff Only" that opened onto a narrow stone staircase. "The museum occupies the public floors," Nikolai explained as they climbed. "My private residence is above and below. You will have access to both." The staircase ended in a hallway that looked nothing like a museum. Here the walls were dark wood paneling, the floors covered in antique carpets, the air smelling of beeswax and old books. Sconces lined the walls, flickering with what Harper realized were real flames, not electric lights. Nikolai opened a door. "This will be your room." The bedroom was beautiful. A 4-poster bed with heavy curtains, a fireplace with a carved mantel, tall windows currently covered with blackout curtains. It looked like something from a period drama, luxurious and completely anachronistic. There's a bathroom through there, Nikolai indicated another door. I will have proper supplies brought up tomorrow. For tonight, you should rest. Harper stood in the center of the room, feeling unmoored from reality. I don't understand what's happening. You're safe, Nikolai said simply. That is what is happening. Sleep, Harper. We can discuss details when you wake. He left, closing the door softly behind him, and Harper was alone in the impossible room in the impossible castle with an impossible man who had promised to protect her. She should be afraid. Everything about this situation screamed danger, but when she finally crawled into the massive bed, she felt something she hadn't felt in 13 months, the possibility of letting her guard down. Harper slept deeply and didn't dream at all. She woke to daylight filtering around the edges of the blackout curtains and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where she was. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest, but then memory returned. The museum, the hiding, Nikolai finding her, the offer of sanctuary. Harper sat up slowly. Her phone showed 10:30 a.m., which meant she'd slept 7 hours straight, a personal record for the past year. Someone had left a tray on the bedside table, tea, toast, fruit, and a folded note in elegant handwriting. Make yourself at home. I sleep during the day, but will find you at dusk. The castle is yours to explore. You are safe here. N. Harper read it twice, then got up and explored her new quarters. The bathroom was as anachronistic as the bedroom, featuring a clawfoot tub and brass fixtures, but also modern amenities like a shower and, incongruously, expensive toiletries that looked brand new. Someone had left clothing too, jeans, sweaters, undergarments, all in her size. She tried not to think too hard about how Nikolai had known her measurements. After showering and dressing in the new clothes, Harper ventured out into the hallway. The castle in daylight was different than it had been in darkness. The public museum floors below were closed Thursdays, according to the schedule she'd memorized, which meant she had the entire building to herself. Well, to herself and Nikolai, wherever he was sleeping. She explored cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. The castle was a maze of corridors and chambers, some furnished like a private residence, others clearly part of the museum displays. She found a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a music room with a grand piano. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and utterly silent. In the library, she found books in dozens of languages, many of them clearly centuries old. A section on mythology and folklore caught her attention, and she pulled down a volume on Eastern European legends almost without thinking. The chapter on vampires made her stomach drop. Harper stood in the silent library, the book open in her hands, and let herself think the thought she'd been avoiding since last night. Nikolai Winter, the man who claimed ownership of a castle supposedly built in 1893 by a millionaire of the same name. The man with bone-white skin and hair, with eyes that reflected light like an animal's. The man who said he only inhabited the castle after dark and was now sleeping during the day. The man who had promised, with absolute certainty, that no man would find her here. Because how would a human stalker find someone hidden by a vampire? Harper closed the book carefully and put it back on the shelf. Her hands were shaking, but not entirely from fear. Part of her, the exhausted part that had been running for 13 months, thought, good, let him be a vampire. Vampires are stronger than Marcus. She spent the day reading and exploring and trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken. When the light behind the curtains began to fade toward evening, Harper found herself back in the library, nervous in a way that felt different than the constant low-level anxiety she'd carried for months. This was anticipation, not dread. Nikolai found her there as the last daylight died. One moment she was alone, the next he was standing in the doorway, dressed in dark clothing that looked both modern and somehow timeless. In the lamplight, his white hair seemed to glow. You slept well, he observed. I did, thank you. For everything. Harper closed the book she'd been pretending to read. Can I ask you something? Of course. What are you? Nikolai smiled, and Harper saw fangs. Small, elegant, but unmistakable. What do you think I am? The books in here have a lot of theories. Most of them are wrong. Some are partially right. He moved into the library with that liquid grace she was beginning to recognize as utterly inhuman. I am vampire, yes, old vampire. I was born in 1347 in what is now Romania, turned in 1375, and have been living in various forms of shadows and secrecy ever since. Harper did the math. You're almost 700 years old. 679, if we're being precise. He sat in one of the leather armchairs, looking completely at ease. Does this frighten you? It should, Harper said honestly. But no, not really. Which probably says more about my mental state than anything else. It says you are practical. You came here seeking protection from a human threat. Whether your protector is human or otherwise is less important than whether the protection holds. He studied her. Are you going to run? Harper thought about it. About Marcus out there somewhere, probably losing his mind trying to figure out where she'd gone. About the police who couldn't help, and the friends who'd drifted away and the job she'd lost. About the bone-deep exhaustion of fear. No, she said. You promised I'd be safe here. I'm choosing to believe you. Something shifted in Nikolai's expression, a warmth that softened his marble features. Then let me show you how that safety works. He took her through the castle again, but this time pointing out details she'd missed. The ward marks carved into door frames, invisible to casual observation, but powerful for those who knew how to read them. The threshold magic that prevented anyone from entering uninvited. The security system that was both mundane technology and supernatural surveillance. No one can find you here unless I allow it, Nikolai explained. The castle exists slightly apart from the human world. People see the museum, but they don't see this. He gestured to the elegant private quarters. It's old magic, woven into the stones when I built this place. You actually built it? In 1893? I did. I move frequently, every few generations, but I needed a stronghold in America, and this city seemed promising. He led her down another corridor. The museum arrangement came later in the 70s. It provides cover and gives me access to artifacts I find interesting. The lease terms ensure I maintain privacy when I need it. They ended up in a kitchen that was surprisingly modern, all stainless steel and granite. Nikolai began preparing food with efficient movements, and Harper realized he was making dinner for her. You don't have to do that, she said. You are my guest, and you need to eat. He glanced at her. I may not require food, but I remember how. Sit. Harper sat at the counter and watched him cook. It was so domestic, so normal, that the surreality of the situation hit her all over again. Why are you helping me? Really? Nikolai was quiet for a moment, focused on chopping vegetables with inhuman precision. Do you know what it's like to be truly hunted? He finally said. To be prey? I'm starting to. I remember it very well. When I was newly turned, vampires were persecuted viciously. We hid in shadows not by choice but by necessity. There were hunters everywhere, humans who made it their life's work to destroy us. His knife stilled. I spent decades running, hiding, watching others of my kind die. It leaves a mark, that kind of fear. It changes you. But you're not afraid anymore. No, I am powerful now. Old enough, strong enough that very little threatens me. He resumed chopping. But I remember what it felt like to be powerless against someone hunting you. When you told me last night why you were hiding, I recognized that exhaustion in your eyes, the way fear becomes heavier than any physical burden. Harper felt her throat tighten. So you're helping me because you understand. I am helping you because I can, Nikolai corrected gently. And because you had the courage to save yourself, even if your method was unconventional. That deserves support. He finished cooking and served her pasta in a cream sauce that tasted better than anything she'd eaten in months. They ate together, Nikolai keeping her company even though he took nothing himself, and Harper felt the strangest sensation. Peace. What happens now? She asked eventually. Now you stay here. Rest, recover. Let yourself remember what it feels like to not be afraid constantly. Nikolai's pale eyes held hers. And when you are ready, we will determine how to ensure you can eventually reclaim your life outside these walls. Sanctuary is not imprisonment, Harper. It's breathing space. What about Marcus? He'll keep looking for me. Let him look. He will not find you. The absolute certainty in Nikolai's voice sent a chill down her spine, but not an unpleasant one. You have my word, and I have never broken my word. No man will find you here. Harper believed him. Foolish or not, she believed him. The days developed a rhythm. Harper woke late, having grown accustomed to sleeping deeply and dreamlessly in the secure castle. She spent her days exploring the building, reading in the library, or working on her thesis, which she'd thought abandoned, but now found herself returning to with renewed energy. Nikolai had provided her with a laptop and somehow arranged for her online accounts to route through untraceable proxies, giving her access to her research without leaving a digital trail Marcus could follow. In the evenings when Nikolai woke, they would have dinner together. He cooked for her or ordered in from restaurants that apparently delivered to the castle without question, and they would talk. He told her about 7 centuries of history witnessed firsthand, about the rise and fall of empires and the evolution of vampire society. She told him about her life before Marcus, about her graduate studies in architectural history, about the small joys that stalking had stolen from her. I used to run, Harper said one night, nearly 2 weeks into her stay. They were in the music room and she'd been examining the piano. 3 times a week through the park near my apartment. I loved it, the rhythm of it, the way my mind would go quiet. But Marcus started showing up on my route and I had to stop. You could run here, Nikolai suggested. The castle has extensive grounds, private, warded, no one would see you. I haven't brought my running shoes. I will have some delivered. He said it like it was simple, like arranging for her to have running shoes was the most natural thing in the world. What else did you lose? The question opened a floodgate. Harper found herself listing all the small pieces of her life that stalking had taken. Coffee shops she'd loved, friends she'd stopped seeing because Marcus would show up anywhere she went, hobbies abandoned because they made her too predictable. The list was longer than she'd realized, and by the end of it, she was crying. Nikolai crossed the room and, with visible hesitation, put a hand on her shoulder. The touch was light, careful, and Harper realized he was giving her the choice to pull away. She didn't. We will get those things back, he said quietly. Not all at once, but piece by piece. You will run again, and drink coffee where you please and see your friends. This I promise you. Harper leaned into his cool presence, letting herself be comforted. He was solid and still, and for the first time since Marcus had ruined her life, she felt like maybe it was possible to heal. After that night, things shifted. Nikolai seemed more present, more attentive to the ways Harper was recovering and the ways she was still struggling. He had running shoes and clothing delivered, and she started jogging through the castle gardens in the evening while he watched from a window to ensure her safety. He helped her research methods for handling stalking situations that didn't involve hiding forever. He listened when she needed to talk and gave her space when she needed silence. And slowly, carefully, Harper began to feel like a person again instead of prey. She also began to notice other things. The way Nikolai moved with lethal grace, the careful courtesy with which he treated her, always asking permission before entering her space. The moments when he smiled at something she said, fangs flashing, and her heartbeat would quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. One evening, nearly a month into her stay, Harper found Nikolai in the library studying something on his laptop with a frown. "What's wrong?" she asked. He glanced up. "Your stalker has filed a missing person report." Harper's stomach dropped. "What?" "Marcus Fell contacted the police 3 days ago claiming you've disappeared and he's concerned for your safety. He's presenting himself as a worried friend." Nikolai's voice was cold with anger. "It's a common tactic. If he can get authorities looking for you, it increases his chances of finding you." "Can they find me here?" "No, but it complicates matters." He closed the laptop. "Harper, we need to discuss long-term strategy. You have been safe here, and you can stay as long as you wish, but eventually you will want to reclaim your life outside these walls. To do that, we need to ensure Marcus cannot simply resume stalking you the moment you emerge." Harper sat down heavily. "I don't know how to do that. The restraining order doesn't work. The police can't do anything unless he commits a clear crime, and he's too careful." "Then we need to change the situation." Nikolai's pale eyes were sharp. "We need to ensure he is caught committing a crime serious enough that the authorities have no choice but to act. or we need to ensure he is unable to continue his harassment through other means. Other means? There are vampire laws about interfering in human affairs, Nikolai said carefully. Killing him outright would bring complications I would prefer to avoid. The vampire councils prefer we stay hidden and obvious murders draw attention. But there are gray areas. Harper stared at him. Are you saying you could kill him, but you're choosing not to? I'm saying I could make him disappear, yes. But it would not serve you as well as you might think. You would never know for certain if he was truly gone. And more importantly, you would not have genuinely reclaimed your freedom. You would simply have had someone else solve your problem through violence. Nikolai leaned forward. I want you to be free, Harper. Truly free. That means ensuring Marcus is stopped in a way that gives you genuine peace, not just absence. Harper felt something warm and fierce bloom in her chest. He was right, and moreover, he was thinking about what she needed, not what was easiest. What do you suggest? She asked. We document everything. We gather evidence in ways human authorities will find credible. And we create a situation where Marcus reveals his obsession in a manner that cannot be dismissed. Nikolai's expression was calculating. But this will require patience and care. Are you willing to work toward that? Yes. Harper met his strange, pale eyes. But I don't want to leave here. Not yet. Is that okay? Something softened in Nikolai's face. You can stay as long as you wish. This is your home now, if you want it to be. The word home settled into Harper's chest with surprising weight. When had the castle become home? When had Nikolai become the person she most wanted to see each evening? When had safety turned into something deeper? She didn't have answers, but she knew something fundamental had shifted. They began working on what Nikolai called Project Freedom. He used his considerable resources to hire private investigators who specialized in stalking cases, routing everything through intermediaries so Marcus couldn't trace it back. They compiled documentation, copies of the letters Marcus had sent, screenshots of his social media posts that referenced Harper in obsessive detail, witness statements from her former co-workers about his unwanted visits. The investigators were able to prove Marcus had violated the restraining order multiple times, creating a paper trail the original police reports had missed. But documentation alone wasn't enough. They needed Marcus to incriminate himself in a way that would force action. The challenge, Nikolai explained one evening, is that stalkers often don't commit prosecutable crimes until they escalate to violence. We cannot wait for him to hurt you or someone else. We need to force his hand in a controlled way. Harper had been thinking about this. What if we use his delusion? Explain. Marcus thinks we're meant to be together. He thinks I'm just confused or playing hard to get. What if we make him believe I'm finally ready to meet him, but we control the circumstances? Harper's mind was racing now. We could set up a meeting in a public place, somewhere with cameras and witnesses. If he shows up despite the restraining order, that's a violation. If he says anything threatening, it's on record. Nikolai considered this. It's risky. He might become violent. He's going to become violent eventually anyway. That's how these situations end, isn't it? He'll escalate until he hurts me or someone else. Harper met Nikolai's eyes. At least this way we control when and where, and I have backup. Me, you mean? I would be your backup. Would you? Harper asked and realized how much she was trusting him, how much she'd come to rely on his presence. Harper, Nikolai's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. I would do anything to keep you safe, anything. If we do this, I will be there, and I will not let him harm you. This I swear. The intensity in his words made her breath catch. She'd started to suspect her feelings for Nikolai were evolving beyond gratitude, but now she wondered if maybe he felt something similar. Okay, she said. Let's plan it. They spent days working out the details. The private investigators would send Marcus a message, seemingly from Harper, suggesting she was ready to talk. They would choose a public location with good security and sight lines, a coffee shop downtown with cameras and regular police patrols. Harper would go in first, wearing a wire that would record everything. Nikolai would be nearby, close enough to intervene if needed. The evening before the planned meeting, Harper was too nervous to eat. Nikolai found her pacing in the music room. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. "We can find another way." "No, this is right. I need to face him. I need to stop running." Harper wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm just scared." "Fear's reasonable. He has hurt you for a long time." "It's not just that." Harper turned to face him. "I'm scared of leaving here. I'm scared that once this is over, I'll have to go back to my real life, and I don't know if I want to anymore. My real life doesn't have you in it." The words hung between them. Nikolai stood very still. "Harper," he said carefully, "you should know that you have become important to me, more important than I anticipated when I offered you sanctuary." Her heart was pounding. "What does that mean?" "It means I find myself hoping you will choose to stay even after Marcus is no longer a threat. It means I have become accustomed to your presence in ways I did not expect. It means I am selfishly glad you came to hide in my castle." He paused. "But you are human, and I am vampire, and those are complications that cannot be ignored." Harper crossed the room to stand in front of him. He was so tall she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "What kind of complications?" "I live in darkness. I will live for centuries more, unchanged, while you will age and eventually die. Loving me would mean accepting a life that is strange and hidden." His voice dropped. "And I am dangerous, Harper. I am predator, regardless of how civilized I may seem." "You've never once made me feel unsafe," Harper said. "Not once, Nikolai. In fact, you're the only person in over a year who has made me feel safe. The only one who kept his promises." "That is different than love." "I know, but I think it's a good foundation." She reached up, hesitating, then touched his face. His skin was cool, smooth as marble. "I think I've been falling in love with you for weeks now. I just didn't want to admit it because it seemed impossible, and I was already dealing with enough impossible things." Nikolai closed his eyes at her touch, and when he opened them again, there was something raw and vulnerable in his expression. "I'm not good at this. I have not loved someone in a very long time. I don't know if I remember how. I'm not good at it either. I haven't felt safe enough to love anyone in over a year." Harper smiled. "Maybe we can figure it out together." He cupped her face in his hands, the gesture achingly gentle. "If we do this, if you choose this, I will protect you with everything I am. I will keep you safe, not just from Marcus, but from the darkness of my world. I will give you everything I can give." "I know." Harper leaned into his touch. "That's why I'm choosing this." Nikolai kissed her then, carefully at first, as though she might break. His lips were cool, and he tasted faintly of something she couldn't identify, something not quite human, but not frightening either. Harper melted into him, letting herself have this impossible moment with this impossible man who had saved her life in more ways than one. When they finally pulled apart, Nikolai rested his forehead against hers. "After tomorrow," he said quietly, "when Marcus is dealt with and you are free, you will have a choice. Stay in the castle with me or return to your life outside. If you choose to leave, I will not stop you, but I will hope very much that you choose to stay." "I'm staying," Harper said with certainty. "I'm staying, Nikolai." His smile was brilliant and rare and made him look almost human. Almost. The next day, Harper stood outside the coffee shop downtown, wearing the wire the investigators had provided, and tried to steady her breathing. It was 3 in the afternoon, broad daylight, which meant Nikolai couldn't be physically present. But he'd arranged other protection, plainclothes security in the coffee shop, investigators positioned at nearby tables, and police officers alerted to be on standby nearby. And he was on the phone with her, his voice in her hidden earpiece, a constant calm presence. "I'm here," she said quietly, pretending to check her phone. "I'm going in." "I am with you," Nikolai's voice replied. "You're not alone, Harper. Remember that." She walked into the coffee shop and ordered tea with shaking hands, then chose a table near the window. Marcus had been sent the message 3 hours ago. "I'm ready to talk. Meet me at Stella's Coffee on Pine Street at 3 p.m. Come alone. H." He would come. Harper knew he would come. Marcus had been waiting 13 months for her to reach out to him. At 3:15, the door opened and Marcus Fell walked in. Harper's body reacted before her mind did, flooding with adrenaline and terror. He looked exactly as she remembered, average height, brown hair, unremarkable features that she'd once thought seemed friendly. He was scanning the coffee shop, and when his eyes landed on her, his face transformed with manic joy. "Harper," he breathed, crossing toward her. "Harper, I knew you'd come around. I knew you just needed time." "Stay back," Harper said, her voice shaking. "Don't come closer." "Baby, it's okay. It's me." He sat down across from her without asking. "I've been so worried." "Where have you been?" "I filed a missing person report because I thought something terrible had happened to you." "You're not supposed to be near me. There's a restraining order." "That was just a misunderstanding. You were confused. People were giving you bad advice." Marcus reached across the table for her hand, and Harper jerked away. His expression darkened. "Don't be like that. We're finally together. This is what we both wanted." "I never wanted this," Harper said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need you to understand, Marcus. I'm not interested in a relationship with you. I've never been interested. I need you to leave me alone." "You don't mean that." His voice was taking on an edge. "You're testing me again. You've been testing me for months, but I passed, Harper. I never gave up. I proved my love. Now it's time for us to be together." In her ear, Nikolai's voice, "You're doing well. Keep him talking. The police are 2 minutes away." Harper forced herself to continue. "Marcus, I'm serious. What you've been doing is stalking. It's illegal and it's frightening me. I need you to stop." "I'm not stalking you. I'm courting you." Marcus's voice was rising now, drawing attention from other customers. "Everything I've done has been to show you how much I care. The letters, the gifts, following you to make sure you were safe. You're just too stubborn to see it." "I see it perfectly. You've been harassing me for over a year. You've cost me my job, my home, my peace of mind." Harper's own anger was rising now, burning through the fear. "You've made my life a nightmare, and you need to stop." Marcus stood up suddenly, his chair scraping back. "A nightmare? I've been devoted to you. I've thought about you every day, planned our future together. We're meant to be together, Harper. I know it in my soul." "We're not meant to be together. We're nothing to each other except a stalker and his victim." "Don't say that," Marcus's voice cracked. "Don't call me that. I love you. Once you understand that, once you stop fighting, you'll see. We'll be happy together. I'll take such good care of you. You'll never want to leave." There it was, the threat underlying everything. You'll never want to leave. Harper saw the investigators at nearby tables tensing, ready to intervene. "I'm leaving now," Harper said, standing, "and I never want to see you again." Marcus grabbed her wrist, his grip painful. "You're not going anywhere until we settle this." "Let go of me." Harper pulled against his grip, but he held tight, and suddenly one of the investigators was there, pulling Marcus away. "Sir, you need to leave the lady alone." Marcus shoved the investigator, and that's when everything happened at once. The security team closed in, Marcus started shouting, and through the coffee shop window, Harper saw police cars pulling up. Marcus fought against the security team, still trying to reach Harper, screaming about how she'd tricked him, how she'd led him on, how this wasn't over. The police officers came in and took over, restraining Marcus while reading him his rights. The entire interaction had been captured on the coffee shop's cameras and recorded on Harper's wire. Marcus had violated the restraining order, made threats, and assaulted both Harper and the investigator in front of witnesses. It was over. Later, at the police station giving her statement, Harper felt numb. She'd done it. She'd faced Marcus and gotten him arrested with evidence that couldn't be dismissed. The district attorney who spoke with her seemed confident they could prosecute successfully this time, but all Harper wanted was to go home to the castle. She returned as the sun was setting, led in by Nikolai, who must have been watching for her. The moment she saw him, the numbness cracked, and she started shaking. "It's done," she whispered. "He's arrested. They think he'll be charged with multiple counts." "I know. I was listening." Nikolai pulled her into his arms, and Harper clung to him. "You were so brave, Harper, so strong." "I was terrified." "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It's acting despite it." He held her while she trembled, his presence solid and safe. "You're safe now. He cannot reach you anymore." Harper let herself believe it. Over the following weeks, the legal process ground forward. Marcus was charged with stalking, violating a restraining order, and assault. The private investigator's evidence made the case overwhelmingly strong. Marcus tried to claim Harper had entrapped him, but the long paper trail of his harassment predating the coffee shop meeting destroyed that defense. His bail was set high, and he couldn't make it. He would stay in jail until trial, and the prosecutors were confident he would be convicted and sentenced to years in prison. After that, there would be permanent restraining orders, and Marcus would be required to undergo psychiatric evaluation and treatment. Harper attended hearings with Nikolai waiting outside, since he couldn't enter the daylight courtrooms. But she felt him there, felt the weight of his promise to protect her. And slowly, as the legal system ground Marcus fell into consequences for his actions, Harper felt the constant fear she'd carried begin to dissolve. She was free. Actually, genuinely free. The night after Marcus's conviction and sentencing 5 years in prison, to be followed by supervised probation and a permanent restraining order, Harper found Nikolai on one of the castle's balconies, looking out over the city. "It's over," she said, joining him. "Really over." "Yes." Nikolai glanced at her. "How does it feel?" "Strange, like I keep waiting for the fear to come back, but it doesn't." Harper leaned against the balcony railing. "I was thinking about what you said, about reclaiming my life, about having a choice." She felt Nikolai go very still beside her. "And what have you decided?" "I've decided that I spent 13 months having my choices taken away from me. Marcus decided where I could go, what I could do, how I could live. And in fighting back against that, I don't want to just return to the life I had before. I want to choose something new." She turned to face him. "I want to choose you. This castle, this life. If you'll still have me." Nikolai's expression was carefully neutral. "You don't have to stay out of gratitude, Harper. You're free now. You can do anything, go anywhere. I know. That's why I'm choosing this." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I love you, Nikolai. Not because you saved me, although you did, but because of who you are. Because you're patient and careful, and you've never once made me feel like I owed you anything. Because you cook me dinner and help me with my research and listen when I need to talk. Because you understand what it means to be hunted, and you gave me space to heal." Harper. Her name was rough in his mouth. "I love you as well. So much that it frightens me sometimes. I'm not used to caring for someone this way." "Then we'll figure it out together." She smiled. "I want to stay here. I want to finish my thesis, and I want to run in the gardens, and I want to have dinner with you every night. I want to learn about your world and share mine with you. I want to build a life that's ours." Nikolai pulled her close, and Harper went willingly into his arms. "Then stay," he said against her hair. "Stay with me, and I will spend whatever time you have loving you. I will keep you safe and give you every freedom I can offer. Your life will be strange, sharing it with a vampire, but it will be yours, freely chosen." "That's all I want," Harper said. "Freedom and choice and you." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Harper kissed him back with all the emotion she'd been holding. Love and gratitude and desire and hope, all tangled together into something fierce and bright. When they finally pulled apart, Nikolai rested his forehead against hers. "There is one thing we should discuss," he said carefully. "You will age and I will not. You are human and mortal, and I am neither." "I know. There are ways to change that, if you wished. Vampirism can be shared, though it is not a decision to make lightly." Harper had thought about this in the quiet moments over the past weeks. "I don't know if I want that. Not yet, maybe not ever. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay. It's your choice, and I will love you regardless." Nikolai's pale eyes were serious. "I would rather have you for your natural lifetime, human and aging, than pressure you into immortality you don't want. Whatever you choose, I choose you." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. After so long having her choices stolen, having them respected and protected felt like the greatest gift. "Can we just take it one day at a time?" "We can take it however you wish." They stayed on the balcony as the night deepened around them, the city lights spreading below. Harper leaned against Nikolai and felt for the first time in over a year completely at peace. Over the following months, Harper's life transformed. She finished her thesis, working from the castle's library with occasional visits to her university that no longer filled her with dread. Marcus was in prison, and while some part of her expected to feel his presence like a ghost, she didn't. The fear had truly lifted. She reconnected with friends she'd lost touch with, explaining her absence with partial truths about needing time away for her mental health. Most understood. Those who didn't, she let go without guilt. She started running again, both in the castle gardens and occasionally in the city parks, reclaiming that simple joy Marcus had stolen. And she fell deeper in love with Nikolai. Learning to love a vampire was strange and wonderful. He showed her the hidden vampire world that existed beneath the human one, networks of immortals who had learned to thrive in secret, bound by complex laws designed to keep their existence hidden. He introduced her to other vampires, some of whom were suspicious of a human knowing their secrets, others who accepted her because Nikolai claimed her as his. "Does that bother you?" Harper asked one night after meeting a particularly disdainful vampire elder. "That some of your kind don't approve of me?" "Not remotely." Nikolai was unconcerned. "I am king among my people, old enough and powerful enough that their approval is irrelevant. If they wish to disdain my choice, they can do so from a distance." Harper smiled. She loved his quiet confidence, the way he never postured but everyone knew his strength. They navigated the complications of their different natures. Nikolai fed on blood, though he assured Harper he had ethical sources and never harmed unwilling humans. Harper learned not to flinch when his fangs showed, learned instead to find them beautiful in their lethality. He accommodated her need for daylight, for human connection, for the mortal world. She accommodated his need for darkness, for privacy, for the immortal perspective that sometimes made him seem distant. They balanced each other. 1 year after Harper had first hidden in his castle, she stood in the exact same gallery where Nikolai had found her that first night. She'd come full circle, from terrified and hunted to safe and loved. Nikolai found her there, as though recreating their first meeting. "Are you well?" he asked. "I'm happy," Harper said. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. Do you regret any of it?" "Not for a second." She turned to him. "You know what I want to do tomorrow?" "Tell me." "I want to walk out the castle gates in daylight, alone, and go get coffee in the city, just because I can, just because I'm not afraid anymore." Harper smiled. "And then I want to come back here, to you, because this is home." Nikolai's expression softened with love. "Then that is what you'll do." The next morning, Harper did exactly that. She walked out the castle gates alone for the first time in a year, into the bright May sunshine. She walked through Chicago's streets without looking over her shoulder. She went into a coffee shop and ordered her favorite drink. She sat by the window and watched people pass by, feeling light and free and wonderfully, ordinarily happy. And when she was done, she walked back to Castle Winter, where Nikolai would be sleeping but would wake to find her there. She walked through the gates that opened for her, past the wards that recognized her now as belonging, into the castle that had transformed from sanctuary to home. She was safe, she was loved, she was free, and she had chosen all of it. The years that followed were rich and strange. Harper completed her Ph.D. and took a position with a university museum, working on preservation and restoration projects that let her combine her love of architecture with her new knowledge of vampire history. Nikolai provided contacts and resources, ancient vampires who remembered the buildings she studied and could offer first-hand accounts of their construction. They traveled together, visiting vampire enclaves across the world and human historical sites. Harper experienced castles in Romania, where Nikolai had lived centuries ago, hidden vampire courts beneath Paris and Prague and Istanbul. She met immortals who'd lived through every era of history, who taught her that the world was far stranger and more wonderful than human history books admitted. And she continued to choose her human life, day by day. The question of turning came up occasionally, gentle discussions about what immortality would mean. Harper considered it seriously, but each time decided she wasn't ready. She loved her human connections, her mortal perspective. She loved the way each day felt precious because she knew they were finite. Nikolai never pressed, never made her feel like her mortality was a burden. He loved her exactly as she was. 5 years after they met, Harper began to notice the subtle signs of aging, fine lines at the corners of her eyes, silver threads in her dark hair. Nikolai noticed too, but his love never wavered. If anything, he seemed to treasure each change, each mark of time passing. "You're even more beautiful," he told her one evening, tracing the lines at her eyes. "I'm getting older. You're living. That's beautiful." He kissed her softly. "Every year with you is a gift, Harper, however many we have." But as more time passed, Harper found herself thinking more seriously about the future. She was 35 now, happy and fulfilled, but aware that her mortal lifespan was slowly counting down. Nikolai would live for centuries more, unchanging, and the thought of leaving him alone when she aged and died began to feel unbearable. One evening, 7 years after she'd first hidden in his castle, Harper found Nikolai in the library and said, "I want to talk about turning." He looked up from his book, utterly calm. "All right?" "I've been thinking about it more, about what it would mean to become vampire." Harper sat beside him. "I know it's permanent. I know it means giving up daylight and aging and eventually dying a human death. But I also know that I love you, and I don't want our time together to be measured in decades when it could be measured in centuries." Nikolai set his book aside. "You're certain?" "I'm 35. I've had my human life. I went to college, got my PhD, reconnected with my family, did everything I wanted to do in daylight. I'm ready for something new now." Harper met his pale eyes. "I'm ready to share your life fully, not just the edges of it. I want to be your partner in the vampire world, not just the human you love who can't fully understand your nature." "It's painful," Nikolai warned. "The turning, and afterward the adjustment is difficult. Your senses change, your needs change. You will need to feed on blood and avoid sunlight. Some humans struggle with those changes." "I know. I've researched it, talked to other turned vampires. I understand what I'm asking." Harper took his hand. "But I also understand what I'd be gaining. Centuries with you. The ability to truly share your world. And I want that more than I want to stay human." Nikolai was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "If we do this, we do it properly. You'll have time to prepare, to say proper goodbyes to anyone who might notice your disappearance. We'll ensure your human affairs are settled, and afterward, I will be with you every moment of the transition, keeping you safe while your body changes." "Is that a yes?" He smiled, rare and brilliant. "That's a yes. If you're certain this is what you want, I will turn you. I will make you vampire, and we will have centuries together." Harper kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the contact, relief and love and anticipation and a little bit of fear, all tangled together. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "When?" she asked. "Whenever you're ready." Harper thought about it, about the human life she'd reclaimed and the vampire future she was choosing, about Marcus Fell, who'd tried to take her choices away, and Nikolai Winter, who'd protected her ability to choose freely. About the woman she'd been when she first hid in this castle, terrified and desperate, and the woman she was now, strong and loved and ready for whatever came next. "Soon," she said. "Let's do it soon." They spent the next months preparing. Harper arranged her affairs carefully, creating cover stories for her eventual disappearance from the human world. She would be moving abroad for an extended research project, she told her colleagues and friends. She'd stay in touch by email, but wouldn't be returning to the States for the foreseeable future. It hurt to lie to people she cared about, but the vampire world's secrecy was absolute. Humans couldn't know vampires existed. The laws around that were ancient and inflexible. Harper understood and accepted it. Her sister was the hardest goodbye. Melissa had been worried about her during the Marcus ordeal and relieved when Harper seemed to recover and thrive. Now Harper had to let her believe she was moving away, knowing she'd never be able to explain the truth. "You seem happy," Melissa said when they met for lunch one final time. "Really, genuinely happy. I'm glad. After everything you went through, you deserve it." "I am happy," Harper said honestly. "I found something good, Mel. Something worth keeping." "Is it a guy? You've been so secretive." Harper smiled. "Yes, it's a guy. His name is Nikolai, and he's wonderful. Will I get to meet him before you disappear to Europe or wherever you're going?" "Maybe someday." Harper hugged her sister tight. "I love you. Don't worry about me, okay? I'm going to be fine. Better than fine." Melissa hugged her back, unaware it was a much more permanent goodbye than she thought. The night Harper chose for her turning was clear and cold, deep into January with snow falling softly outside the castle windows. She and Nikolai were alone in his private chambers, the room lit by candles and warmed by a fire in the hearth. "Are you ready?" Nikolai asked, and Harper heard the weight of the question. This was the last chance to change her mind, to choose mortality after all. "I'm ready," she said without hesitation. Nikolai drew her close, his cool hands cupping her face. "I will make this as gentle as I can, but it will hurt, and you will be afraid. Hold on to me, and remember I'm with you. I will not leave you alone in the darkness. I trust you." He kissed her then, soft and loving, before moving to her throat. Harper felt his fangs against her skin, sharp points of sensation, and then the bite. Pain flared bright and shocking, but beneath it was something else, a strange pulling sensation as Nikolai drank. Harper gasped, gripping his shoulders, feeling her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The world started to gray at the edges, her body growing cold and weak as blood left her veins. Just when she thought she might pass out, Nikolai pulled back. His wrist was at her mouth, blood welling from a cut he'd made. "Drink," he commanded softly. "Drink and let the change begin." Harper drank. The blood was strange and coppery and burned going down, but she swallowed and swallowed, feeling it spread through her system like fire. Nikolai held her steady, murmuring encouragement, and Harper drank until he gently pulled away. "Now we wait," he said, carrying her to the bed and laying her down carefully. "The change will take hours. Sleep if you can. I'll be here." Harper tried to respond, but the fire in her veins was spreading, consuming everything. Her body began to convulse, changing on a cellular level, and she heard herself crying out. Nikolai was there immediately, holding her hand, his cool presence the only anchor in a storm of pain. Time became meaningless. Harper existed in a haze of sensation, burning and breaking and rebuilding. Nikolai never left her side, talking to her constantly, reminding her she was safe, that this was normal, that she would survive. Finally, after what felt like hours or days or years, the pain began to recede. Harper's senses sharpened dramatically. She could hear Nikolai's breathing, could smell the candle wax and snow and blood, could feel the texture of the sheets beneath her with perfect clarity. Her body felt different, stronger, foreign yet familiar. She opened her eyes, and the room looked different, brighter, clearer, every detail in sharp focus despite the dim lighting. She turned her head and saw Nikolai watching her with anxious hope. "Harper," he said softly, "how do you feel?" Harper considered the question. Her body felt powerful and strange. She was thirsty, desperately thirsty, in a way she'd never experienced. But beneath that was a sense of rightness, of having become something she was meant to be. "Different," she said, and her voice sounded different too, clearer and more resonant. "But good. It feels good." Relief transformed Nikolai's face. "You're a vampire now, fully turned. The change was successful." Harper sat up carefully, testing her new body. Everything felt sharper, faster, more intense. She looked at her hands and saw they were paler than before, the veins less visible beneath skin that seemed almost luminous. "I'm thirsty," she said. "I know. Come, I have blood prepared, fresh, ethically sourced from my usual suppliers." Nikolai helped her stand, and Harper marveled at how steady she felt despite having just undergone a massive physical transformation. He guided her to the next room where bottles of blood waited. Harper drank, and it was nothing like the tentative sips she'd taken from Nikolai's wrist. This was sustenance and satisfaction, and a deep primal need being met. She drank until the desperate thirst eased, until her new vampire body felt sated. "Better?" Nikolai asked. "Much." Harper turned to him, seeing him with her new vampire vision. He was beautiful, had always been beautiful, but now she could see the otherworldly quality of him more clearly. The way he moved, the ancient power that radiated from him. "How do I look?" "Exquisite," Nikolai touched her face reverently. "Your eyes have changed. They're silver now, like mine. And your skin is paler. But you're still you, Harper, still the woman I love." Harper looked at herself in a mirror and saw the transformation. She looked like a vampire now, pale skin, white hair shot through her natural dark color, silver eyes that reflected light. She looked otherworldly and powerful and beautiful in a way that was distinctly inhuman. She looked like she belonged at Nikolai's side. "I love you," she said, turning to him. Thank you for this, for giving me forever with you." Nikolai pulled her close and kissed her deeply. "Thank you for choosing it, for choosing me, for choosing this life. I will spend the rest of our immortal existence proving I'm worthy of that choice." "You already have," Harper said. They spent the following weeks navigating Harper's new existence. She learned to control her vampire strength, to move with the preternatural grace that now came naturally. She learned to feed ethically, to navigate the vampire social structures, to exist in the darkness that was now her domain. And she learned that she was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way she'd never been as a human, constantly looking over her shoulder for threats. One evening, nearly a month after her turning, Harper stood on the same balcony where she'd first told Nikolai she loved him. She was waiting for him to join her after he finished some business with the Vampire Council. The night was clear and cold, and Harper could see every star with her enhanced vision. The city spread below in a tapestry of lights and sounds and smells, all of it sharper and more vivid than it had ever been when she was human. She heard Nikolai approach before she saw him, her vampire senses picking up his presence. He joined her at the railing, sliding an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how much has changed, about the woman who hid in your museum 8 years ago, terrified and desperate. She would never have believed she'd end up here." "Do you regret it? The turning, I mean." "Not for a second." Harper leaned into him. "I regret Marcus and what he put me through, but I don't regret anything that came after. Not the hiding, not falling in love with you, not choosing this life. It's all been worth it." Nikolai kissed the top of her head. "I am glad. You've given me something I didn't think I would have again. Companionship, partnership, love. For centuries I lived alone, convinced that was my fate. Then you hid in my castle and changed everything." Harper smiled. "Best decision I ever made, breaking and entering into a vampire castle. I maintain that you walked in through the public entrance during operating hours. That's not breaking and entering." "Fine. Best decision I ever made was staying after hours in a vampire castle and trusting the vampire king who found me. That I will accept." Nikolai turned her to face him, his pale eyes serious. "We have centuries ahead of us now, Harper. What do you want to do with them?" Harper thought about it, about all the possibilities that stretched before them, endless as the night. "Everything. I want to see the world, learn the full history of vampires, meet the ancient ones who've been alive since Rome. I want to help you with whatever vampire politics need attention. I want to continue my research. From a vampire perspective now, I want to do everything, and I want to do it with you." "Then that's what we'll do." Nikolai's smile was soft and loving. "Together. For as long as we both shall exist." He kissed her then, and Harper kissed him back with all the love and gratitude and joy she felt. She'd come to this castle broken and afraid, seeking sanctuary from a stalker who'd tried to steal her life. She'd found safety, yes, but she'd also found love and partnership and a future beyond anything she could have imagined. She'd hidden in his castle to escape her stalker, and the vampire king had sworn no man would find her. He'd kept that promise, and so much more. Years turned to decades. Harper and Nikolai traveled the world, experiencing everything vampire immortality could offer. They visited ancient vampire strongholds and witnessed human history unfold from their unique perspective. Harper became known among vampire society as the King's Lady, respected for her intelligence and her advocacy for turned vampires who struggled with the transition she'd navigated so successfully. She never forgot her human life, the struggles that had brought her to Nikolai's castle, and she used those memories to help others in the vampire world who'd been turned against their will or who struggled with their new nature. She became an advocate and counselor, using her experience to make the vampire world kinder. And through it all, Nikolai was at her side, constant, steady, loving, the vampire king who'd offered sanctuary to a desperate human and found his own salvation in the process. 50 years after Harper's turning, they stood together in the same gallery where they'd first met. The museum was closed for renovations, giving them privacy in the space that held so much history. "Do you remember the first night?" Nikolai asked. "When I found you hiding behind the manuscript case?" "Every detail," Harper said. "I was terrified and desperate and certain I was about to be thrown out or arrested. Instead, I found you. You were so small and frightened, like a wounded bird hiding in shadows." Nikolai pulled her close. I wanted to protect you immediately. That instinct has never faded. You've protected me from everything, from Marcus, from the darkness, from the complications of vampire politics. You've given me freedom and love and centuries of happiness. Harper touched his face. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every single day. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You chose to stay when you could have left. You loved me, despite what I am. Nikolai's silver eyes were warm. If anyone should be grateful, it's me. They kissed in the gallery where their story had begun, two vampires in love, and outside the castle walls, the human world continued on, unaware of the immortal romance that had started with a desperate woman seeking sanctuary and a vampire king who'd sworn to protect her. Harper had hidden in his castle to escape her stalker. The vampire king had sworn no man would find her. And in keeping that promise, they'd both found something neither had expected. A love that would last for centuries, a partnership built on trust and choice, and the freedom to be exactly who they were. It was everything Harper had never dared to dream of, and it was real. She was safe, she was loved, she was free, and she would be. Forever.